Welcome back, everybody. Jesse here. And in today's episode, we're going to do a little bit more of an advanced. It's not really difficult, but it's definitely one of the more complex widgets that we've done to date. So there's a little bit of following along to do, but this is ultimately what we're going to end up with. Now, none of the functionality is going to be set up for us when this is all said and done. I just wanted to show you, this is my super advanced project, my testing project, but I just kind of want to show you what it's all about here. So you can see here in the crafting window we created last time, we have the ability to select the different categories here. And then we can also come over here and we can select this. Now, what we're doing today is this box here in the center. I call it the crafting info window. And we have the ability to change the amount that we're going to craft, and the amount right here of ingredients that you need to craft it coincide with this. So if we come over here real quick, close our inventory, come over here and we just pick up these objects here, open it up. Now we have these items in the inventory and you can see that they are no longer grayscale, that we can craft them here. So if I start sliding this up, now you can see we still have enough bread, but we don't have enough berries to be able to craft this. And then we keep moving up. Now we don't have enough bread or berries to do it. And this is how much it's going to take. And this is how much we're going to get, because on one, we can get 5 bread for every one that we craft. Come up here and it coincides there. So if we were to craft 6 of them, we'd get 30 here. And over here is just another test one that I did to be able to switch back and forth between them. And again, it shows it there that we can't craft it. And now we can. Select health, come over here. And again, there we go. So like I said, none of the functionality is going to be set up, but this is the idea that I have for this particular window right here. So let me go ahead and let's jump into this. Today's episode and others just like it are brought to you by the patrons listed on the screen. If you'd like to support the channel in future development, then consider visiting my Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee page, where you can receive various benefits such as early access to my videos, project downloads, as well as personalized support. You may also want to consider joining the community by joining my Discord server, where you can receive help from me as well as the community. So come on over and be a part of the conversation. All right, so I want to start this episode off just a little bit different than what I normally do here. I want to give you guys kind of a little insight in what I do, or what I sometimes do when I have a complex layout and it's kind of hard to conceptualize. Even when you're inside the engine trying to move everything around, it's still kind of hard to conceptualize. So what I like to do is I like to come over here to Photoshop. Now you can use GIMP, you can just use paper or paint, whatever you want to do, whatever you're proficient with, whatever you've got. But you want to put it down and just get a good idea of what it looks like. It's much easier to do all your layouts here than it is in the engine, especially when you're trying to figure out all the different widgets and stuff. So what I did was I came over here and I made this relatively to the specs that I want. So now when I figure out what I need to do inside the engine, so how do we break this down, right? Because we've got all these different blocks. So how are we going to lay this out? Because inside the engine, it's really kind of like a table, like a spreadsheet or anything like that. It's just a bunch of tables, and you've got to be able to put the information in the specific cell. So what do we do? So what we got is we get this entire image right here. So I set this image. We'll go over all the dimensions on the inside there, but we got the overall dimensions here. So then what I do is I come down and I grab a guideline. First thing you want to do is you want to look, do you have any clear empty space that goes from one end to the other without interruption? Well, we do. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to come down in here, and I'm going to put this right about there, right? So what I have now is I have 2 horizontal boxes, right? Because we've got this here and this to the right of it. So this is one horizontal box above another horizontal box. Now, this doesn't have to be a horizontal box. This just has one item in here, but we're going to call it 2 horizontal boxes right here. So we've got 2 horizontal boxes stacked vertically on each other. So we need a vertical box and stack 2 horizontal boxes on here. Well, we still have all this neat shape over in here that we need to do. So how are we going to break this out? So we've got this horizontal box here that we need to work with. So forget about this. This is just going to be one right now. So we know this is going to be a horizontal box. We don't need to worry about anything extra in here for now. So even though the guidelines are going to shoot all the way across here, only focus on what we're doing here, okay? Because I can't control the length of the guidelines. This is just to help conceptualize, okay? And again, on paper or in paint, you find your own way to do it, but this is the way I do it. So now we need to come over here. We need to break this down. So we got this image here. So this is one side of this. So I'm not going to worry about exactly where this snaps in at. We're going to go right here. So in this horizontal box, now we have 2 horizontal boxes. And actually this, just like this one, this doesn't have to be a horizontal box. Neither does this one, right? We just have this image. This is just one thing, an image with a number over it. And really, this is going to end up being an overlay, so that's not a big deal. So we've got this here. Well, now we have this over here. So this is going to be a horizontal box. So horizontal box, okay? So now in here, let's break this down. So now inside this horizontal box, we've got 3 elements stacked vertically, right? So let's grab another bar here. So we're gonna go like this. We're gonna come down here and we're gonna separate these out. And then we're gonna come in here, and we don't even have to have this last one in here. So now you can see we have inside this horizontal box, we have a vertical box that stacks 3 horizontal boxes on top of one another. So I hope you can kind of see where I'm getting at with this. This is kind of how I break it down. So this is going to be the easiest way. And obviously we're going to have a slider in here. I can't represent that here in Photoshop, but this is just kind of helps break it down. So now when we go inside the engine now, you're going to see I take all this information and I'm just going to do the rough layout of everything. And then I'll put all the elements inside that layout. So let's go ahead and jump into the engine now. All right, so let's go ahead and open up the content browser here, and I'm going to structure this a little bit differently in here. This is going to start getting chaotic if we don't. So I'm going to go new folder. I'm going to call this one inventory, and then I'm going to create another new folder. I'm going to name this one crafting. So that way I can just kind of separate all my widgets and put them in the proper folders here. So I'm just going to grab all the primary inventory ones, which should be really only 3, and I'm going to drag them and put them in the inventory folder. Move them here, and then I'm going to grab the crafting ones, which is this one, crafting slot, crafting category, and I'm going to drag them into the crafting box and move them there. Make sure you come up here to content, right click, and go fix up redirectors. Just make sure we fix everything up in there. And then I'm going to jump into the crafting folder here, and let's create a new user widget blueprint, and user widget. I'm going to call this one WBP underscore crafting info window. It's a little verbose, but it's descriptive. It tells me exactly what it is. It's the crafting info window. So let's go ahead and open this up. And I hate how it always does this and makes windows pop up in a different screen. So if you're tired of that as well, come up here to edit, editor preferences, and then right on the first window for the appearance that pops up here, you're going to see here asset editor open location. Instead of default, let's drop it down and go main window. There we go. So now everything should always dock onto the main window. In the crafting info window, I'm going to put up on screen here the overlay that we had from the Photoshop, so that way you can kind of see what's going on. Let's just go ahead and lay out all the crafting boxes or all the layout boxes that we need. So let's start out with a size box. Drop that here. That's the first one we're going to put in here. Now, another thing to keep note, down in the description, I'm going to leave a link to some information about performance and using your creating widgets. We need to try to eliminate using canvas panel. You don't want to use those for all these little extra windows. I know a lot of you like to use a canvas because it's a drag and drop and you can put things on the screen wherever you want to. It's very performance heavy to do that. So you should try to do that as little as possible. Size box is a little bit performance heavy as well. And actually overlay isn't much cheaper than using a canvas panel, because you can put a widget on top of another widget, but it's less than a canvas. You want to try to use canvas as very little as possible, only where it makes sense. So like our main HUD, it makes sense for it in there. But I'm going to leave a link down there. Go ahead and read that on your own time. We will end up doing another episode somewhere down the line where we come back, we optimize all our widgets, because what we've done to this point isn't very optimal. So we will come back and do that a little bit. I just wanted to get stuff out here, right? Because this is the prototyping phase. We'll come back and we'll refactor everything somewhere down the line. So we've got a size box there. So now let's go ahead and drop a vertical box in here, right? So this size box just tells us the overall dimensions. We're not going to worry about the dimensions at this point. We're going to do everything in just a little bit, but we got the overall size box, right? And then remember, inside that, we had 2 horizontal boxes inside of a vertical box. So let's drop the vertical box, and then we have 2 horizontal boxes that we're going to put inside of that. Okay, now in this top horizontal box, remember, that's where we had the image here that was on the left, and then we had all those vertical boxes here on the right. So in this horizontal box, let's go ahead and add the overlay, right? This overlay, this is going to be where our image is at. And then I'm going to enter another horizontal box in here. And this horizontal box will be the one on the right for all the other things. All right. So in this horizontal box now, actually, we don't even need a horizontal box. Let's just go like this. Let's just go ahead and throw in a vertical box right here inside that horizontal box, right? Because we got every one of these elements are going to be stacked horizontally. So we're going to have this overlay here with the image, and then we're also going to have the vertical box, which will be to the right of this overlay. Okay. So this vertical box, we don't need the horizontal there. So inside this horizontal, this vertical box, we need 3 horizontal boxes. Remember, we've got the name, the ingredients, as it were, the ingredients slots right here. And then below that, we'll need the craft button with the slider and the text right there. So we need 3 horizontal boxes inside this vertical box. So just go ahead and grab 3 of those. And then inside the last horizontal box where the craft button is, as well as the slider and the text, we're going to need a couple more horizontal boxes to put those elements in there as well. So let's grab another horizontal box and put it inside the last horizontal box here. And this one will be for the button. Grab one more, put it inside that. So now we have 2 nested horizontal boxes inside of this horizontal box. I know it can seem confusing. That's why it's important to lay it out early in advance. And then that should be it. Down here, this last horizontal box, this is where our text will go. So now we have our ultimate layout here. So now we can just go ahead and we can start adding elements to this. All right, so let's jump up here to the size box. All right, now the size of this widget I'm creating for right now, we're hard setting this in, but I'm going to set this to 600 wide and we're going to go 500 tall. All right, and then with that, I'm going to come up here to the fill screen and I'm just going to do desired. So that way it just shows us the desired size of this. And you can see all our elements in here. Don't worry about that. We're going to get to it. Next, we actually want a background border on here. So what I'm going to do, we didn't include that there. I just want to get the layout with the boxes. So I'm going to take the first vertical box. I'm going to close it down. You can see everything is inside this one vertical box, but I'm going to right click on here. I'm going to go wrap with border. So that way, if we want a color, in this case, we're just going to do color, but if we want an image in the background, then we can go ahead and do that. So this border is going to allow us to do that. I'm going to name this background border. And for now, I'm not going to make it a variable, but if it is something that you want to change down the road, you can. If you want to change it during runtime, then make it a variable, but we don't need to for this. I'm going to come over here to the color and opacity. I think that's what we want, the color opacity. Nope, we don't want that. We want the tint. Take the tint down to black. Hit OK. I just want a black background. You make it whatever you want. And then let's jump down here now into the first vertical box. And the only thing we need to do with this, let's go ahead and set our padding to 0. You can see it's got some padding around here. We don't want any of that padding. So let's go ahead and clear that out. So let's expand this out now. So now we got this first horizontal box and nothing we need to do in there. So let's go ahead and expand that. Our overlay now. Now this is where our image is going to be. Let's go ahead. I want to set some padding to this overlay. First, let's go ahead and we'll take an image and let's just put it in here. Where is the image? Drop it inside the overlay. So now it's nested underneath the overlay. You can see that in there. And then with that, we're going to need some text as well. We're just going to drop it in here on the overlay, and the text we'll worry about setting that up in just a second. So with the overlay, let's set some padding in here. I'm going to go 18, 18, 0, 0, hit enter. And there we go. That's going to give us our 18 pixel buffer right there on the top and 18 on the left right there. So now with the image, I'm going to come down here to the image, and this is something we want to change. So make sure that is variable is set, should be by default. And I'm going to name this big image. And I'm going to come down here to the image size, and we're going to set this image size to 256 by 256. It's a big boy in there, so just make sure your textures that you're going to put in here are at least 256 pixels squared. These can be the same textures you use for your inventory icons if you want. They scale down. If you make them at 256, they should scale down to those size just fine, as long as you keep it into the power of 2. Next, let's head over to the text now on here, and I'm going to change the name to be amount when crafted. So this is how many we're going to create when we actually craft the item. And we want to make this a variable because we're going to change this at runtime. Change its padding. We're going to go to 0, 0, 4, 0. And that's going to give us the right padding of 4 right there. It's just going to kind of push out. I want to come down here to the text block. I'm going to give it a value of 99 just because I like to show that when on my text like this for my inventory items. Let's change the horizontal alignment to be right and the vertical alignment to be the bottom. And then let's change the color. And I'm just going to choose the green color that I normally use here. And I'm just going to make it just a little bit darker. Let's go, I don't know, right about in there. That looks good. Select OK. And then I'm going to change the font size to be 26. There we go. So now we got our large image and the text right there. So now let's go ahead and move to the vertical box that is to the right of that. I'm going to minimize the overlay just so it's easier to see. Now for this vertical box, we want to fill this all out right here. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to hit fill, and there we go. It's going to take up the rest of the room that we have right here, and it's not going to push over the image. So with that, now head down to the first horizontal box. Now this is, remember, the text, the name of the item that we're going to have in here. So I'm going to grab a scale box, and it's not great practice to have a scale box inside of a size box because they fight for drawing in there. But I think as long as it's nested down in here, it should be okay. I don't have any issues there, but that's just what I read on that link down in the description I told you about. I was reading about that. So there's probably some other better ways to do it, but the reason why I'm using I don't want a safe box. I want the scale box. And the reason why I'm using that is because the name of the items could change. We could probably go without it just because this is going to be such a large space up here that it'd probably be safe. And if you run into any problems, you can always change font size to be a little bit smaller just so your longest item name fits in there comfortably. But I'm going to leave a scale box in there for now. And on this scale box, let's go ahead and change the size to fill. Then I'm going to change the padding. I'm going to go 0,18,0,0. The horizontal alignment, I'm going to go center, and the vertical alignment, I'm going to go top. So now inside the scale box, I'm going to take a text and we're going to drop it inside that scale box. And for this, I'm going to change the name to item name because we're going to be changing this at runtime. We want to make sure that is variable is selected. And then I'm going to just change the font size of this down to 20. And again, like I said, if you really don't want to put this in a scale box, if you run into performance issues, anything like that, then just change the size of this font to accommodate your largest item name in here without having to expand the size of the box and making it look all funny. All right, but I think for right now, it should be fine just like this. All right, so now let's jump down to the next horizontal box. And on this, we again want to set this to fill. We want to come over and set the horizontal alignment to be center, and the vertical alignment can stay fine, stretched just like that. Now inside this horizontal box, because we have multiple items in here, the easiest way to handle the ingredients in here is to use a grid panel. So I'm going to come up here to grid panel and I'm going to drag it right into that horizontal box. Now this grid panel, I'm going to rename this grid panel to ingredient panel and make sure that is variable is selected because we're going to change this at runtime. And the reason why we're using a grid panel is because if you haven't used them before, you can see just like a table, it has columns and it has rows. So as we're putting things in here, we can tell it where we want to insert the items in here, whether we want them in column 0 or row 5 or whatever. We can actually set that information in here. Now, because we're going to have 4 items in here, and the reason why I'm using 4, keep this in mind when you're doing your game, you can do it however you want, but the reason why I'm putting 4 in here is because I'm not going to make my crafting system that super complex to where it's going to take more than 4 items to craft something. Most of what I anticipate having done will be 2-3 items with a maximum of 4, but most everything's going to be 2 or 3 items to craft something. 4 is going to be for super complex one, because the crafting system in my mind will be a little bit more complex as far as like the ingredients might have to be other crafted items, right? So it's going to be crafted items, multiple crafted items to create one new crafted item, that kind of a thing. So it's going to have its nesting factor, but I'm not going to have more than 4 ingredients per item at this point. So if you want more, then you're going to have to deal with that on your own. But for me, I'm just going to do 4, right? So with that, we've got this ingredient panel. So now we're going to have these 4 images in here. So let's go ahead. I want to create another widget that we're going to use as a template for what goes in here for all the little slots, just like we did with the crafting slots and the inventory slots. We're going to create a new one that just goes in here. It's not going to really be a button. It's just going to be used to display the ingredients list, but it's going to have several buttons laid out. So instead of creating a bunch of different buttons to fit in here, we're just going to create one, and then we're going to use it to insert into this grid panel. So let's go ahead and go do that now. Open your content browser, and in here, we're still inside the crafting folder. So I'm going to right click, user interface, widget blueprint, user widget, and just like we've done before, WBP underscore, and I'm going to call this crafting ingredient image. That's all I'm going to do. It's not a button or anything. It's essentially just going to be an image. So crafting ingredient image, and let's go ahead and open this up. Now this is going to be relatively easy. So I'm going to grab a horizontal box, and I'm going to make this to look like most of the other stuff. Horizontal box, drop it down in here. Then I'm going to grab an overlay and put it inside of the horizontal box. And then I'm going to grab an image and drop it inside of the overlay. And then with that, we're going to need some text as well on top of the overlay. So let's go ahead and set this up now. First, I want to take the fill screen and I'm going to move it down to desired. For the image, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change its name to ingredient. I'm going to change its vertical alignment and its horizontal alignment, and I'm going to put them both to stretch. And then I'm going to come down here to the image size, and I'm going to change this to be 64 on the X and 64 in the Y. And the reason why it looks a little bit funky right there is because we have this text block in here, which is eating up all the space. So select the text. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change the name of this to be amount. And we're going to change this at runtime. So is variable. And like I do with the rest of my numbers, I'm going to go 99, change the color to be green. Now, the smart thing would be to do it in the color picker to have taken that green and put it up here. So I'm going to have to do this every single time, but I'm just going to come down and change this to be about right there. Select OK. And the font size, let's go ahead and change that down to be 10. And I changed that. That doesn't need to be 99. I need that to be 10. And I want the text to read 99. Sorry about that. And there we go. Now you can see it fits in here. This image is now the size we want it, 64 pixels. So now we need to change the horizontal alignment to be on the right and the vertical to be the bottom. And I'm going to change the padding, and I'm just going to add here to the right. I'm just going to add 2 pixels here to the right. And there we go. This is what we're going to use to display the ingredients within the info window. So let's go ahead and head back to the crafting info window. All right, so now I'm going to come back here and I'm going to select the ingredient panel again. Now we're just going to put these widgets in here just for prototyping. They're going to be cleared out when we actually run this, but they're there for prototyping. Setting anything in here when we put these images in here, you can set the images to them, you can do whatever you want, but remember, they're going to be deleted right away. These are just here. All this is going to be deleted once this first pops up. All this text is going to be changed during runtime. So again, this is just prototyping, but I'm going to come down here now to the user created. I'm going to find the one we just did, the ingredient image, and I'm going to drop it into the ingredient panel. So there we go. We've got this. First thing I want to do is I'm going to come over here to the padding, and I'm going to give it some right padding of 5 pixels. Okay. So now that I've got that done, I'm just going to highlight it and I'm going to push Control D 3 more times to give me a total of 4 in here. So now they're all laying on top of each other. Now remember, like I said, this is a grid panel, so it lays it out in columns and rows. So what we need to do now is if I select the second one, you're going to see all these buttons right here. So this corresponds to where we want to move it. Right now, everything is row 0, column 0. If I select the right here, it's going to change columns. Now it's going to put this one into column 1. I'm going to come over here. Now I'm going to hit this one twice. It's going to put it into column 2. And I'm going to hit this one 3 times to put it in column 4. And for some reason, all my padding didn't hold when I copied them over. So I just need to come over here now and change the padding of this. Oh, that's why I didn't have it, is because I put the padding right there when I didn't want it right there. I need it on the image. And there we go. Now that I fixed that, each one has 5 pixels in between it, and they're centered in here within the horizontal box that we have over here. So let's go ahead and jump over now to the next horizontal box. We want to come up here to the size. We want to make this one fill, and then we're going to change the vertical alignment to be center. There we go. So now we're going to be able to center all the information here in the space that's left between down here and these images right here. So now inside the next horizontal box inside of there, we're going to add a button, drop it into this horizontal box, and I'm going to name this button craft button. Then I'm going to give it some padding here. I'm going to go to the padding. I'm going to go 21,0,0,0. So that way it gives it 21 pixels of padding here on the left-hand side. Then I'm actually going to come in here and I'm going to change the image size on all of these to be 75 on the X, and we're going to keep 32 defaulted. But I'm going to want this, if you don't do this on every style, then when you hover over it, it's going to go down to its default size. So I'm just going to right click and copy on image size, come down here to hovered, image size, paste, pressed, image size, paste, and then come down here to disabled, paste, and there you can see that the image size on everything has changed for us. So now let's go ahead and add some text to this and put it into the button. And you can see it made our button jump up in size. So we'll take care of that now. The text, we want 0 padding. For the text, I want it to say craft. And then for the font size, we're going to take it down to about 15 pixels. So there we go. Gives us a little bit better size right there. So now let's jump down to this next horizontal box, which is where we're going to end up putting the slider. But before we do, in this horizontal box, I want to add this to fill. I want it to take up the rest of the space next to this button. Now let's grab a slider and put it inside of this horizontal box. With the slider selected, I'm going to come up here and change the name. I'm going to change it to be amount slider. It's already a variable, so that's good. We want to leave that there. I'm going to change the size to fill, and I'm going to give it some padding here. The left side only, I want it to be some 15 pixels. Down here in value, I'm going to change this value to be 1, minimum value 1, max value. Now you can change this to be whatever you want. For now, I'm just going to do 10. I don't anticipate being able to craft more than 10 items at a time, but we'll see however that goes. That's called game balance. You do that during gameplay to see what needs to be changed. But for now, 10 is good enough. So I'm going to put that in there. Now I'm going to come down here to the step size, and I'm going to make the step size 1. So now I'm going to come down here to the advanced tab, and I'm going to expand this out. So what we need to do, you see here, mouse uses step. We have to make this true. If we don't, and we're using the mouse to activate this slider, which is the most common way it's going to be done, then it's still going to give us decimal places on these steps. So by using the step, mouse uses step here, it's going to conform to this step size right here. And then lastly, we need to come down here to is focusable, and we want to make this false. Again, we don't want any of this to be focusable. Otherwise, we won't be able to exit our window very easily. It'll make it complicated for the player. So let's go ahead and grab a text box and let's drop it here in the horizontal box with the slider. And it's going to fit right there to the right-hand side of that. So with the text block selected, we're going to change the fill size, or the size of it, to fill. I'm going to change this to 0.25. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change its name to be amount text. And because we want to change this at runtime, is variable. This is going to be tied to the slider and show us how many items we're going to end up crafting. For the text, I'm just going to give it the value of 1. And I'm going to change the font size to 12. And because you can see it's pushed up here against the slider, I'm going to give it the horizontal alignment and vertical alignment of centered. And now that should fit nicely within this box. And there we go. That should finish up the top half of our info window. The last part is relatively easy. So let's select the horizontal box. And now let's just go ahead and search for text. What we want here is we want the text box multi-line. Now, I don't know why they do this. This is called editable text multi-line and regular text box multi-line, but they're both editable by the user. So we're going to make some changes on here. I'm thinking maybe editable, you can't shut it off. It's going to be editable no matter what. Whereas in this is editable by the user, but we can actually shut it off. So this is the one we want. So let's take this, drop it onto the final horizontal box. Go ahead and select that. And I'm going to change its name now to be item long description. All right. Now I need to come back up here to this horizontal box really fast. And we need to have this fill out the space in here. So let's just go ahead and set this to fill. And then I'm going to give it an overall padding of 18, because that's what we did here around the edge. Is we've got an 18 pixel buffer around all the edges. So we set that here to match and give us a nice even border all the way around. So now with the item long description text box selected, let's go ahead and do its size. We're going to set this to fill. Now I want to give some text in here, and I'm just going to give it some basic text, as you could see from the video at the beginning of this episode. And I'm just going to give it some lorem ipsum. It's just some Latin in here, some space filler just to fill it in so that it gives us just an idea of what things look like in here. So now we need to get rid of this background color. So let's go ahead and open up the style, and we're going to end up making this read only. So you can see all the different backgrounds here, but the only one that's going to concern us is the read only. So I'm going to open that up, and for this tint color, I'm just going to set this to alpha 0. Now we're not going to notice anything here because it's not set to be read only yet. In order to do that, let's come down here under appearance is read only. So if we select that, there we go. The background will go ahead and disappear. So padding, let's go ahead and set our padding to 0. We don't want any padding in here on our text. We've already got padding using the box. But now we need to make a bunch of other choices here. This will actually allow to have scroll bars in here if the text is too long. Your text should never be longer than this needs to be. As a matter of fact, I'll probably at some point make this entire info window a little bit smaller because it's just going to look funny having all this empty space in here, because you're not going to fill all this up with the item description. You could, but most likely you're not going to. This is all just prototyping and to get the game moving forward. But I don't want the scroll bars in here. So if I come down here, you can see all these scroll bars styles right in here. I'm going to go to every single one of them to the tint, and I'm just going to set alpha to 0. So I'm just going to copy this and then right click and paste it. So do that for all of your slot images. And there we go. You can see all the little images right here, the little display icons. They have disappeared because we set the tint to 0. So that's perfect. So now I'm going to close the scroll bar style. Let's come back up here to the text style. We want to change the font size. I'm going to do a font size of 12. And now, unfortunately, with this, we can't set this box, unfortunately, because it's an editable box. Even though we got it read only, when you hover the mouse over it during gameplay, you're going to get the I-beam cursor that indicates that you can select it. So you're still able to select it. And by doing that, even though you can't edit it, it still makes it focus. But if we come up here and we go focus, search for focus, we don't get anything. You get background image focused. You can change the image colors and image and all that stuff for the background focus, but that's it. There's no actual is focusable. We can't do that like we've done with the other ones. So what I've done to fix this is you come down here to visibility, and instead of being visible, we're going to go not hit testable, self and children. If you just did self, it's not going to do. You have to do self and children. Select that. So now this is no way to be focusable. Your cursor is going to stay the normal little arrow that we have, and we're going to be able to exit out of our inventory without any issues. And there we go. That's it. This is the window created. I hope you kind of understand the process that I went through. I could have probably went through and not did all those horizontal and vertical boxes at the very beginning, but I just kind of wanted to show you that once it's broken down, you can kind of just lay it out there, and then you just fill in those boxes, so you don't have to try to think, okay, what works here, what doesn't work here. If you think in advance exactly what you're going to need, it's going to be a whole lot easier to lay everything out moving forward. So hopefully that made a little bit more sense as we just kind of walked through here and did all this. And again, you probably really do want to delete these. You don't want these as a standard template, but it's fine in here for prototyping, and it's fine even really moving forward. I would say if you're getting ready to package your game, you go through and you're doing your cleanup, you want to delete these because they're going to be created at the beginning. A lot of this is going to be created at the beginning. So other thing you're going to notice, if you haven't noticed it already, I haven't compiled this yet. Now, when I come up here and I hit compile, this is going to change. There we go. If you get all this, do not freak out. If we scroll in on here to the very bottom, very close, you're going to see it says basic Latin. It recognizes that we put Latin in here. I have no idea why it does this, but it does this. It's fine. We're going to be able to read this. So if we come over to the primary HUD, and I'm going to change the name of this. I didn't do it last time to be just crafting window. All right. So now if we come to the user settings, we find our crafting info window. I'm going to drag it and put it inside the canvas panel. There it is right there. I'm going to change its name, get rid of the WBP at the front. I'm going to set its anchor to be top center. I'm going to clear out its position on the X. I'm going to come over here to alignment and go 0.5, so that way it centers it on the X. And I'm going to go size to content. It's going to put it in there. I'm going to give a little spacing up on top. I found, at least with my particular layout, if I hit 84, that's going to align it with the top of the black backgrounds on my other widgets. Now, I don't anticipate this ever coming open when you're in a storage unit with this other one open. This should never be open, but all the same, it's all just kind of in the same pattern right here. And like I said, we're going to come back at some point and we're going to optimize all of our widgets, because this is very kind of, all of these are kind of poorly done. We shouldn't hide these. If you go read that article that I linked in the description, you're going to find out that even when you hide it, you're still drawing you're still have a lot of CPU usage. It's redrawing everything even when it's hidden. So you want to actually call all these, and we'll come back and we'll optimize this down the road. But having the system out, you don't want to worry too much about optimization. You want to keep it in mind when you're prototyping and you're building your systems, but you don't want it to be at the forefront of everything. Just keep it in mind. Know that you're going to have to come back. Don't set yourself up for failure by keeping by not thinking of optimization, but just know that you're going to have to come back and you're going to have to optimize at some point, because all this here, this isn't going to be my final layout of my game, right? This is just all prototype. I'm going to have some nice images and backgrounds. We're going to have a bunch of nice things in here for a final game. We just want to get it out. We want to get it working. We want to get it looking relatively decent. So you can see here, the text is just fine. And actually, when you shut the project down and come back in, you won't have this again. Again, I don't know why it does this when you compile, but it does. So let's go ahead and hit play now that we got that up on the screen. See how it looks on the screen, and there we go. So it's on there. It looks pretty decent. If we hit our tab, we can come in here, we can mess with the slider. Nothing does anything. Obviously, we didn't set up anything yet, but you can see how everything looks. So I think in the next episode, we're going to start setting up all the functionality. We're going to set up the crafting window right here. And then after that, we'll set it to work up with this info box. I just figured since we were on a UI kick from the last episode, we'll just continue the UI. Actually, after my last episode is when I decided that I wanted to do this info box right here. I hope you guys like this. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this. If we just went way over the top, we don't need this info. I know there's a big issue, a big debate now, not issue, but a big debate now on all the UI in games, and people are tired of having all the UI elements and everything's just cluttering your screen and filling it all up, and everybody wants to be minimalistic with UI, but at the same time, people want to have information when they're playing their games. And I think in a survival game, the UI is kind of important when we do things like this, like crafting and inventory and things like that. Maybe in a Call of Duty shooter, we don't need all the UI elements up top. They can be kind of distracting, but I think for things like this, I think it fits in well. You let me know down in the description what you think. I think that's going to about wrap it up for this video. I hope you guys found it useful. If you did, go down and hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe while you're down there liking it. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down in the description, or you can come on over to the Discord, join us over there, be part of the community. And until the next episode, peace.